This weekend we celebrate, as we heard before Mass, the Feast of the Holy Family. And we always celebrate this feast day in this time following Christmas Day. It's a great time for us to focus on the Holy Family. We are still in the Christmas season, right? We begin the 12 days of Christmas on Christmas Day. And so it's a good time for us to reflect on, in a sense, the normal family life of the Holy Family, of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. It's also a good time for us to celebrate this feast as we prepare for the new year. As I reflect on the Holy Family, what changes do I want to make? Right? What do I want to take out of my life that's not good for me? What do I want to add to my life that is lacking? And so I suggest that a quote from Pope Benedict, from a talk that he gave on this Feast of the Holy Family, should be the structure of all of our New Year's resolutions, or whatever we want to call them, promises, whatever you want to call it. This is the quote. May the example of the Holy Family inspire all Christian families to be schools of prayer. Of all the examples that the Holy Family gives us, the most important thing that they show us is that the family is to be a school of prayer. So what is revealed to us in this role of the Holy Family, and the role of all families, as the school of prayer? One thing it shows us is that the family should be about relationship. Right? Family is the first place where we learn what it means to be in relationship with others. In my homily for the Immaculate Conception, I quoted a theologian who talks about the fact that the smile of the mother awakens a self-awareness in the child. Right? When the child sees his mother smile at him, he is aware of himself, he's aware of the fact that he's not his mother, and that he's in a relationship with this other person. And so in the family, we learn these basic rules, these basic things about being in relationship. And we learn as little kids about sharing. And we have to share toys with our siblings or with our friends. We learn about not always getting our way. Although if you're the youngest like me, more times than not, you got it. We learn to look out for the good of others. We learn to look out for those whom we love. We learn how to sacrifice our own wants, our own desires, sometimes even our own needs, sometimes, to make others happy. Right? Yes, I want to do this, but I see that my mom and dad or my siblings want to do this, and so I'm going to sacrifice what I want for their good. Now, maybe that doesn't happen all the time, but we should learn that to some degree. We also learn how to ask for what we want and what we need. Right? It can't be all about giving all the time. Sometimes we really need things. And so in that context of the family, we learn how to voice our needs, our concerns. Right? We learn how to not just be doormats that are walked over all the time, but to make our desires known. All of these things are important for us on the human level, or on the natural level, but they're also important for us on the supernatural level. Right? Learning all of these things in the context of the family helps us in our spiritual life. Right? Because our spiritual life is one of a relationship with God. God became man. Right? That's what we're celebrating in these days, the fact that God became one of us. And so our relationship with him is going to have some of these human elements that we learn from our families. And the second thing that I want to touch on, maybe more importantly, is how we foster this idea of the family being that school of prayer. Right? How do we practically make this a reality? I'll give a few suggestions. We do this, first of all, by going to Mass as a family. Right? As a family, going to that privileged place of prayer, that privileged place of worshiping God. Right? And in the gospel we hear this. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph go to the temple to present their sacrifice, right? To make their offering. That's what we're doing when we come to Mass, right? We come to witness the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross and to pray. And so we should do that together as a family. And we should do that as much as possible, the same time and the same place every week. I know this is challenging, but I think it's very important, right? That we have a time and a place when we go to Mass, that we stay faithful to that. Because if we don't do this, then we can sort of fall into the thinking, even if we don't mean it, do it on purpose, that we just have to fit Mass in. Right? What fits best in my schedule among all the other things that I want to do in my life, to where I can just go and get it over with. Again, we might not have this sort of outright thinking, but that's somewhere back there if we jump around going to Mass all over the place and at all different times. 95% of the time, whenever I was a kid growing up, we were at the 9 o'clock Mass at St. Mary's on Douce Road, and we were sitting right in the front so that if I messed up, everybody saw it, and I had to behave. Right? Now, I know that there are going to be times when we can't do that. Right? It's more important that we go to Mass than when and where we go to Mass, but I don't think it's insignificant, the fact that we should go at the same time, same place, as much as we can. Again, when I was a kid, I remember this time of year in particular, when we were playing basketball, we went to a lot of 4 p.m. Masses on Saturday afternoon, and then went to our basketball games after that. I'm not saying you're a terrible person if you do this, but I think it's good for us to sort of focus and commit ourselves to going to Mass at a regular time and place. The second thing is going to confession as a family. Right? Going to confession on a regular basis together is a wonderful thing. And we didn't do this as a family. I didn't go to confession from the time I went to my first confession until I was a sophomore in high school. So I'm certainly suggesting that you do something that I didn't do, but I think it's a good thing. And I remember whenever I was at one of my summer assignments, the deacon in the parish told this story about how he was trying to be the enforcer in his family. He was trying to help out his wife and say, no, you need to his daughter, you need to go to confession, right? You're about to receive this sacrament, you need to go to confession. Her response to him was, why do I have to go if you don't go? And that was sort of the beginning of his conversion, his coming back to the faith and eventually becoming a deacon. Right? That your children learn from your example. Right? I guess you are my children in a sense, and you learn from my example too. Right? They learn from the example that we give them. And if we practice the faith well, if we show them that it's important by doing it, then they're going to see that. But they're also going to see the opposite side of it, right? If we don't practice the faith, then they're going to see that too. You're going to see that we're not committed, that it doesn't mean much for us, that we simply see it as something that we have to do. Right? And they're not going to be very inspired. So kids notice this. So I encourage you, someone gave me this idea the other day, to put it in your calendar. Right? If something's not in my calendar, I'm not going to remember to do it. If it's in my calendar, I still might not remember, but there's a better chance. Right? So put it in your calendar once a month to go to confession. Don't everybody put it the first weekend of the month, because then it's going to be crazy. But put it one weekend of the month to go to confession as a family if possible, to make that commitment to receiving that sacrament. These last three are things that I've been inspired by in seeing in families. Whenever I was in seminary, on one of my breaks, I went to stay with a family who was living near the seminary. And I remember I went with them to go to school one day. The parents were going to drop them off. I'm riding in the car. And on the way to school, they didn't listen to the radio. They didn't really fight that much either, which was impressive. But what they did is they prayed. On the way to school, a simple prayer asking God to watch over them, to bless them, to help them have a good day. And if I remember correctly, each one of the kids went around and said something that they wanted to pray for. Right? We have to drive in the car from time to time, and so why not make use of that time to pray as a family? Right? And you might even learn something that your kids need or struggling with, and you can pray for them and maybe approach them about it and help them out in that way too. So it's a wonderful, easy way to pray as a family. Another very simple thing that we ought to commit, all of us ought to commit ourselves to, is grace before meals. Again, as a family is wonderful, even in restaurants. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and my friends and been so impressed with the fact that we prayed before we ate our meal. Right? A lot of times we do it without even thinking. It's just part of our routine. But that simple witnessing of the faith can inspire people, can encourage them to come back to the faith even. Right? Look at these people praying. There must be something to it, and it gets the wheels turning. I love going to eat dinner in people's houses, people that I know, and whenever they pray during their meal, right? They'll say grace, but then before they sort of start normal conversation, they'll have an extra little prayer time. And so some of the ways they do this is they give highs and lows, right? What was a great part of your day? What was a not so great part of your day? They maybe say a grace of the day, right? A time in their day that they saw God working, that they felt Him close, that they witnessed His working in their lives. And the last thing that they maybe could do is to say one thing that you're thankful for. Right? I think a lot of us, myself included, are pretty spoiled, and we forget to be thankful for all of the wonderful things that we're blessed to have. Right? Wonderful things we're blessed to have in our lives. And so to spend that little second of our day giving God thanks for something that we recognize He has given us. So this idea of the family as that school of prayer is incredibly important. And I see more and more parents, right, not taking this responsibility seriously. And we're even sort of having to think of ways at the parish that we can do things to help to educate children, which of course is not a bad thing, but really we're in a sense taking away some of that responsibility from the parents who should and could be doing this. That is what parents promise at baptism, right? That they're going to be the first teachers in the waves of the faith. And so that's an incredibly important responsibility to live up to. There are so many things being thrown, as you know, being thrown at young people today. They need to be equipped to handle them. They need to have that strong foundation of faith so that they don't stray whenever they are challenged. I want to quote one more thing from Pope Benedict. He says that Mary and Joseph's concern for Jesus is the same as every parent who educates children, introduces them to life and to understanding reality. So today, therefore, we should say a special prayer to the Lord for all families of the world. Imitating the Holy Family of Nazareth, may parents seriously concern themselves about the growth and education of their children so that they may mature as responsible and honest citizens without ever forgetting that faith is a precious gift to be nourished in their children through personal example. And so may God give us the grace to be able to teach those little ones well, right? To be able to teach your children in the ways of the faith. And may the effort that you put into this important task be rewarded not only with your children's growing in the faith, but also with an increase of your own faith and a deepening of your relationship with the Lord who, for our sake, came to dwell among us.